Well, one of the things that's been going on as part of all the stuff we've seen this summer in Great Britain and the United Kingdom, and that is wrapped up with a lot of the protests, the Christian nationalism stuff, the Unite the Kingdom, the Tommy Robinson stuff. In fact, the big united theme has been a fear of Islam, which I guess if you are looking for the most literal definition of Islamophobia, that would be it. That's what the word literally means. But the big argument, and I'm sure a lot of those that are taking those positions will want to say that they're not afraid of it, although certainly there seems to be a sense to me of spreading fear, has been that if there's a threat to Britain, to British culture, to Christianity, to Britain being a Christian nation, then it is coming from that quarter. That the threat is perceived as being from Islam. And people talk about the Islamization of Britain. People talk about political Islam. People will talk about an agenda to take over the country.
Everywhere
Now, I thought it would be helpful to engage specifically with those questions and those issues in a separate video series to talk about some of the things that are involved. And what I want to do is to start, I guess, from the ground up, from two perspectives in terms of the ground up. Because a lot of what we are hearing from people, it comes out in the media, in Christian media, it comes out in people that are organising rallies and events. It comes out with people that have a national as well as a nationalist agenda. And when Christians are doing that, it often feels to me like it is coming from a distance. So from the ground up in two ways. First of all, I'm speaking as somebody who has lived much of my life in two of the cities, the majority of my life in two of the cities that are particularly associated with Muslim immigration into the United Kingdom. So I'm currently in Birmingham, and I've been here in the West Midlands for 15 years, I guess, in the sort of the greater Birmingham area. People in the sort of Black Country and Bear wouldn't quite like me referring to it that way, but there's a strong sense that it is connected in, and the church I pastored was on the border between Birmingham and Sandwell, so that a lot of our community, a lot of the neighbourhood was from Birmingham. And in that context, we had people from Muslim backgrounds coming. We had at least one person who definitely became a Christian and was baptised, but we had lots of gospel engagements with Muslims from Birmingham and from Sandwell. Prior to that, I had a little gap when I was down in the southeast of England, but I grew up and spent the first 20 years of my life in Bradford. And so that meant I sat alongside Muslim friends at school. We played together, we studied together, we argued and debated together. I think I spent a bit too much of my chemistry lessons at the time debating religion with my friend who sat next to me, my Muslim friend. So perspective number one it is important when we're talking about this that we hear the voices of Christians who are living their lives and witnessing to Muslims within the context of daily life, within the context of church ministry. I'm aware as well that there are Christians who specifically go and do evangelism specifically focused on going to find where Muslims are and declaring the gospel to them. That's slightly different to my own experience, and you will get different perspectives from that as well. I have been out with a friend a number of times in Birmingham and Manchester who specifically would go to give gospel literature, Jesus DVDs, and get into conversation and even debate with Muslims. But first perspective, there are Christians seeking to live in communities where there are Muslims living and to share the good news. There are Christians seeking to be part of churches and lead churches in areas where there are Muslims in that community. Here's the second thing. That means that we are also getting to know and get the perspective of ordinary Muslims living here in the United Kingdom. And that's important because a lot of what we're hearing about is this threat or perceived threat from Islam. And the risk of that is that we then treat all Muslims as part of this homogenous mass and think in terms of Islam. And it's constantly, what do we do about Islam? What do we do about Islam? And less attention to what do we do about people made in God's image who happen to be Muslims. Now, it's worth saying at this stage that I recognise, and this is where I may differ from some people, that I recognise that there is an issue in what some people might refer to as political Islam. So when we're dealing with Islam itself, we've got to be aware that there is, first of all, within mainstream Islamic thinking, there's the sense, you could say this is the sort of theological sense, that Islam is about the whole of life, public and private, and therefore there is a concern amongst some Muslims, significant concern, to influence society, and that would mean for many the belief that a country, a nation, should be Muslim, should be Islamic. Some will go further and actually say that actually there should only be one state, the Islamic State. And what that means is that you will get to the extent where you start to move, and I wonder whether this is different groups or whether this is a continuum, but you will get to the state where you have what is regarded as Islamist, an agenda that is prepared to use violence to coerce people in a society into a very specific vision of what that Islamic State should look like. Now, it's worth saying that, remembering that first of all, there is a strong view within Christianity, within evangelical Christianity, that our faith isn't just a private, personal sort of family matter or individual matter, but rather is public. that in that sense Christianity is political, that we are meant to be salt and light, and that means to influence society around us. And that will range from just a sense of Christians should be there for the good of the city, the good of the community, the good of the nation, if you like, where they live, through to the belief that a nation should have Christian values and customs and laws. It should be a Christian nation in that sense, and through to some of the things we're beginning to see in terms of a sort of a theocratic type agenda, a sort of theonomist kind of thing. And what that means is this: we have to recognise that whilst those things will be there within Christianity, and there will be particular views and expressions and interpretations of them within Christianity, that if Christians were in another country that was not considered a Christian country, or even here in the UK where it considers itself much more of a secular nation now, that it would be ridiculous to assume that everybody who identifies as Christian, including those that are practicing adherence, therefore is signed up to that agenda, even is aware of that agenda, or in fact signed up to a specific agenda when there seem to be multiple ones here, and that therefore in a country that white British people identifying as Christians move into another country, whether it's a communist country or a Hindu country or a Jewish state like Israel, the only Jewish state in fact, or a country that considers itself Islamic, that they might therefore pose a threat to the culture, the identity and the existence of that nation. We would recognise that that is a frankly ridiculous view to take. And so that's the first thing that we just want to pick up on, and this is about starting to get to know our Muslim neighbours. The first thing to recognise is that they are individuals, and to assume that they all homogeneously hold to and are pursuing the same agenda, or even that they're being used passively in an agenda is frankly nonsense. So the first thing I want to say, the first two things I want to say is, if you want to talk about Islam and Muslims in Britain from a Christian perspective, first of all, get to know Christians, Christians from Muslim backgrounds, Christians that have grown up in all other kinds of backgrounds, including those that grew up in church context, but get to know Christians who are living amongst and witnessing to and worshipping in churches in areas and in contexts where there are Muslims. Get to know Christians who know Muslims. And secondly, get to know individual Muslims. Get to know them as people. And there are lots of things that we're going to get to know about them and that we need to get to know about them if we want to share Christ with them, if we want to be good news people for Muslims. And I hope that we do. Because if there's one thing I could just say, just to sum up here, I've heard a lot about the need to put on the armour of God for what some people are saying and claiming and predicting is going to happen. And it's all about this big culture battle, all about this big threat. And this need for Christians to be sort of involved in this culture clash that has moved from being about a culture clash with liberal society to being a culture clash, a culture war, even with Islam. And I want to say this. Spiritual warfare is not about those kinds of things. Putting on the armour of God is something that we do daily to enable us to resist temptation and to stand firm in Christ. We don't armour up for a battle with our Muslim neighbours. We armour up to battle with Satan's lies, Satan's deceit, Satan's temptations, to be able to put to death our own sinful desires. And so that means take all of that kind of agenda out of the equation when you're thinking about Islam and Muslims. What should we be doing in response to Muslims coming to Britain and settling here? What should we be doing in response to them having children and grandchildren as they settle? What should we be doing in response to people converting to Islam? What should we be doing in response to a concern amongst Muslims, some Muslims, to evangelise, in effect, to get Muslim converts and to influence the nation here? Well, what we do is we get to know Muslims, we learn to love them as neighbours and friends, and we get to think about how we share the good news of the gospel with them. That's our responsibility. And that's what I'm going to be thinking about in these videos. I'm going to talk a bit more about some of the sort of the political stuff and ideological stuff, but primarily I want us to think about how do we get to know and love our Muslim neighbours.